President Trump addressed the nation last night. We'll go through what he said, why he said what he said, and what it means for you. Bernie Sanders is staying in the race. I'll tell you why he's staying in the race. Sarah Palin, just stick around and you'll see. And finally, an apology from me. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. President Donald Trump addressed the nation last night from the Oval Office. I will tell you this. I support 100% that he addressed the nation last night. I think times like this call for the president to do that. There's something about the president sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office and speaking directly to the American people. There's something about that that draws Americans to the television and gives them a sense of calm. And look, he's the leader of the nation. We needed to hear from him last night. I thought the tone was right. I don't have an issue with really anything he laid out in that. And understand this. It's a pandemic. It is going to spread. It's still mainly affecting older people as far as getting really, really dangerous. Apparently, it does spread like wildfire. Your kids are going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Be careful. Wash your hands. Calm down. You don't need to bury yourself in a bunker somewhere. Take it serious, probably more seriously than I'm taking it, but take it serious. And when I say more seriously than I'm taking it, I want you to understand something. I haven't changed really anything. Yes, we have bought more water. We've bought more canned goods just in case there's some kind of disruption with, food and water. Those things tend to be fairly important. But I don't panic. And frankly, I don't make any adjustments, none. I spent the day at an arcade playing video games with my kids. Why? Because life is too daggone short. And all these people who are screaming at you to panic and you have to, everyone's going to die. And let's dial that down a notch. And also, people have to live their lives. There's nothing more highfalutin than being in the Washington, D.C. media bubble, being one of these Washington, D.C. politicians and telling people, hey, just stay home. Well, working people can't do that. People have lives. People have hourly jobs. People have to go to work. People have small businesses. They can't just put a closed sign on the door and say, sorry, can't risk getting sick. People have to live their lives. So yes, be safe. Take precautions. Don't panic. Don't stop living your life. You can't. You can't do that to yourself. You can't do that to the economy. Here was President Trump last night.
Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic. We have been in frequent contact with our allies, and we are marshaling the full power of the federal government and the private sector to protect the American people. This is the most aggressive and comprehensive effort to confront a foreign virus in modern history. I am confident that by counting and continuing to take these tough measures, we will significantly reduce the threat to our citizens, and we will ultimately and expeditiously defeat this virus.
President Trump looked a little stiff there. That's clearly not exactly his wheelhouse, the sitting behind the desk. He does much better standing up, working the crowd, but be that as it may, that's nitpicking. I thought he had the right tone. I thought he did good. And I'm glad he's getting it out there about these tough measures. Here's the truth of the matter. This is going to be a difficult thing to overcome for people like me, for people like you, people who believe in individual liberty, small government. They don't want the government doing this. They don't want the government banning this, restricting that. And I never really want that, ever. However, when it comes to things like this and deadlier things, we're going to get one of those one day. The government is going to step in and do things that make me cringe. The government is going to say, you can travel here, you can't travel there. The government is going to say, you're no longer allowed on a plane. We have the governor in Washington banning people from attending events with over 250 people. There's already talk about President Trump banning air travel from American states. They are going to do things that make you and I uncomfortable. I am allowing in this moment, because it is a pandemic, a little bit of a grace period, understanding that some control has to be assumed over the American people in order to keep this thing from spreading. President Trump gave the EU no quarter.
The European Union failed to take the same precautions and restrict travel from China and other hotspots. As a result, a large number of new clusters in the United States were seeded by travelers from Europe. After consulting with our top government health professionals, I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
That is the doozy of the night. That was the one when I saw it, I went, whoo. I mean, that's a very big deal. On top of, vacations, setting that aside, let's talk about the amount of trade that goes back and forth between there. What's affected there? What's not affected? That is a very, very, very big deal. And look, he's right. The EU has nobody but itself to blame. Ever since they've gotten together and formed this EU, they have had this huge open door policy in Europe, and it's destroyed Europe. How do you have a huge virus break out in China and you don't restrict travel from China? You know what? The EU came out today and they're mad at Trump about it. Look in the mirror, brother. That's on you. Control your borders or we have to control ours. He kept going.
We are cutting massive amounts of red tape to make antiviral therapies available in record time. These treatments will significantly reduce the impact and reach of the virus. Additionally, last week I signed into law an $8.3 billion funding bill to help CDC and other government agencies fight the virus and support vaccines, treatments, and distribution of medical supplies.
Also the right move. And here's what happens when these things break out. You get every single Monday morning quarterback out there. I'm sure you've seen them all. Oh, why didn't we already have this? Well, why didn't we have that? Well, how do we not have enough test kits? People, there's no nation on the face of the planet that is prepared for a virus nobody's really heard of before. Nobody is. But these are the things that happen when they come to your shores. If you have a relatively competent government, which we do, at least as competent as government gets, you slowly start building up the vaccines. You slowly start building up the treatments, and eventually you'll get the thing contained. I'm not saying people haven't made mistakes. They certainly have. But it's easy to sit back, and be the keyboard warrior, say, if it was me in charge, I would have had 800 trillion test kits. Oh, shut up. You don't know what you're doing. I am concerned more than anything else. I'm concerned about the working man and how he's taking it on the chin, and I'm glad it appears President Trump is as concerned as I am.
To ensure that working Americans impacted by the virus can stay home without fear of financial hardship, I will soon be taking emergency action, which is unprecedented, to provide financial relief. This will be targeted for workers who are ill, quarantined, or caring for others due to coronavirus. I will be asking Congress to take legislative action to extend this relief.
There you go. I don't know whether that's the exact solution, but I do know that Washington appears to be aware that that is the issue. And I will tell you, I have these stories. I had one yesterday. A floral company bought $20,000 worth of flowers to give away at a gigantic event. Giveaway. Just word of mouth, spreading it around. And floral companies aren't made of money, ladies and gentlemen. That's a small business. Boom. Event got canceled. $20,000 worth of flowers already purchased. Do you think those are a little bit perishable? Yeah. Small business is going to take it on the chin. That's one story in a sea of them. Tough. That's tough. NIH Director Fauci said things are actually going to get worse.
So I can say we will see more cases and things will get worse than they are right now. How much worse we'll get will depend on our ability to do two things: to contain the influx of people who are infected coming from the outside, and the ability to contain and mitigate within our own country. Bottom line, it's going to get worse.
Not exactly words of encouragement there, but he's probably not wrong. The truth of the matter is we are getting a handle on it. We don't have a handle on it yet. So calm down, use precautions, wash your hands, and for goodness sakes, don't touch your face. All right, I'm Jesse Kelly. We'll be right back. Joining me now, one of my favorite guests we have on this show, former congressman and current president of business, or dean of business at Liberty University, Dave Brat. Congressman, I know you are the furthest thing in the world away from being a fan of China. I'm sorry, I don't feel like there are enough fingers being pointed at China over this whole Wuhan virus thing.
Yeah, no, I know it is pretty amazing. I got kind of 2 points there. Number one, the coronavirus came from China, right? So we're all fine on that. But the second point, which people I don't think are following because the mainstream media won't get it out there, is that the economic dislocations are also the fault of us mainly, all the MBA geniuses at Harvard, right, that have been sending our entire supply chain over to China to be penny wise and pound foolish, right? So we've eked out a little bit more max profits by sending 85% of our pharmaceutical, manufactured ingredients are now in China. And then the supply chain, I just read a nice article on this. The supply chain is a chain, right? So think of a chain that's coupled, right, like that. Well, if you break part of a supply chain, right, with Apple phones, they get their parts from multiple sources, 9 countries minimum, right? You break part of that chain and you got yourself a problem. And so the first thing you learn at Liberty University in a finance class or business class is diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? And so how in the world as a country can you have a national security risk now? So we've put a monopoly position under a communist country. What can go wrong, right? And so the economic dislocations, the reverse way to phrase this is if you had your supply chains in the United States, there would not be this economic dislocations you're seeing, right? There wouldn't be the issues. If we need masks, we got them. If you need ingredients, we got them. But that's the problem.
Can you expand just for a little bit on when we shipped 85% of our pharmaceutical capability to China and exactly who was responsible to that? When did that happen? I feel like so many Americans are just waking up and looking around like, wait, what? China does all this? When did that happen? Who did it?
Yeah, about 20 years ago, and there's an excellent book, and I'm going to blank on her name, and she's just done heroic work. And I think the name of the book is China RX. And so Google that, but I think it's Rosemary. I'm going to blank on the last name. But she's the superstar that deserves credit for exposing that piece. And so it's been 20 years, and everybody wants lower healthcare costs. And so, my free trade friends say, what's wrong if you're getting cheap inputs? And the problem is, this is not free trade, right? You're trading with a communist society who doesn't use the price system and who doesn't share information, right? The beauty of the price system in economics, prices reflect an infinite amount of information is captured in that price. And so with China, you got very clear of it. They won't even share their information on this Wuhan district and the makeup of this virus with WHO, our Centers for Disease Control, and it appears they don't. Their ultimate concern isn't about the safety of their people; it's about the safety of their economy and protecting the party. And so we've learned a lot of painful lessons real quick here. I think now all the geniuses are going to sharpen their pencils again and reel some of the supply chains back here.
What do you make so far of the response we've seen out of Washington? Not just President Trump's address last night, but they're talking about injecting $1.5 trillion into the economy. They're talking about free this and free that and free copays. And while I understand the government has to do some things when it comes to an outbreak like this, when I start hearing about stimulus and I start hearing about free, I have to tell you my antenna goes off a little bit, Congressman, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. Yeah,
well, I think, thank goodness President Trump has a business background. And so, there's some pieces that we may have to do in federal policy. The testing And that regimen, the CDC, had it ready to go a week ago, and there was some glitch. And so that we got to work out, right? That's crucial that we start testing. The major beef against China all of a sudden says they're at a plateau, and it's because they quit testing. So well, if you quit testing, of course, there's no data coming in, right? So we need to know, what does the data look like so we can all make rational decisions about how bad the spread of this thing is. And so, the bill's larded up, all the headlines show, Pelosi's larded it up with the usual spending requests that they always do. So that's no shocker. But, the president has the bully pulpit, and he's good at it. So he can say, look, get rid of this junk. Let's do what's good for the American people. Let's get the tests going and pay for that part.
What are you doing personally as far as adjustments you're making in your life? I mean, you're the dean of business at Liberty. You're out there mingling with several people all day long. Everyone wants to get up, get the picture taken with Dave Brat. Are you backing off? You staying home more? You got the family stashed in a closet somewhere? I feel like I'm being probably too flippant about it. I spent the day at, an arcade with my kids. I'm just not changing anything. Am I being an idiot? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm ratcheting it back a little bit, and around us, the private sector is reeling it all in. I won't name any names, but the firms are reeling back interactions and sending folks to conferences and academic meetings we have set up, and meetings we have in D.C. are being canceled. So I'm just kind of taking my cues and kind of watching what other folks are doing and try to mimic some of that. And so the growth of this thing, there's this, statistical, this R factor, and the R factor is low. It's only 2. That means one person spreads it to 2 people. But the devastating thing about even that growth rate is it takes only 4 months to spread to, 400 million people with that rate of spread. And so I think the dangerous aspect is when you get a reported case, if no one's being tested, right? If you got a reported case of someone test positive for this thing, I think that's a sign you got hundreds around that person that are walking around infected. And the young people, it doesn't have, a devastating impact on the young. You can't tell some of them have it. And so that lingering piece is the dangerous part. How many folks really are infected around you? And it may take a week or 10 days for you to find that out. So I'm playing it a little cautious.
All right. Stay safe back there. Congressman Dave Brat, Dean of Business at Liberty. I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, you too, Jesse. Thanks for the reporting. I appreciate it.
You bet. Well, Bernie says he's staying in. Why? I'll explain in a second. Well, believe it or not, even though the entire news cycle was all about the Wuhan virus, there is still a presidential election going on right now, and Democrats are still kind of fighting it out. Joe Biden is clearly going to be the nominee if he doesn't completely lose his marbles between now and the nomination process. And Bernie Sanders, well, he's sticking around.
While our campaign has won the ideological debate, we are losing the debate over electability. I cannot tell you how many people our campaign has spoken to who have said, and I quote, "I like what your campaign stands for. I agree with what your campaign stands for, but I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because I think Joe is the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump." End of quote. We have heard that statement all over this country. Needless to say, I strongly disagree with that assertion. But that is what millions of Democrats and independents today believe. Donald Trump must be defeated, and I will do everything in my power to make that happen. On Sunday night, in the first one-on-one debate of this campaign, the American people will have the opportunity to see which candidate is best positioned to accomplish that goal.
Well, one, he's already sunk because of what he just said. The truth of the matter is Democrats are desperate to beat Donald Trump, and I sympathize with that. But when Barack Obama was up for re-election, gosh, I would have voted for my phone if I thought it could beat Barack Obama. So they're desperate. That's what happens when you have a president from the other side that you hate. You get desperate. So Bernie's already finished. The one-on-one debate doesn't matter. He's already finished. He could sit up there and float down on a cloud with lightning bolts coming from his eyes, and people still wouldn't be impressed with Bernie because they don't think he can beat Trump. Frankly, they aren't sure Joe Biden can beat Trump either, but they're willing to take a chance on him. One, that's a humongous mistake that every party makes. We made the same mistake with Obama when we nominated milquetoast Mitt Romney. A sitting president, coronavirus or not, is very, very, very difficult to beat. As long as the economy remains relatively strong. And by the way, people, the economy is still really strong. When they're talking about a stock market collapse and things are crashing, the stock market is in the same place today that it was a year ago. It's still really high. We're going to be fine. It's hard to beat a sitting president like that, and you can't beat him with the safe pick that you think is more electable. I actually argue they'd be better off rolling old Bernie out there and give it a shot. Let the old commie go after it, be that as it may. Let me tell you why Bernie Sanders is staying in this race. One, he's old. He's not going to run again. When a man gets to the end of his life, or towards the end of his life, I don't want to act like Bernie's dying or anything like that. When a man gets towards the end of his life, well, you start taking some chances. I don't know about you, but when I'm Bernie's age, I'm probably going to be skydiving a lot more. It's just the way it is. What do I have to lose? A couple years? Also, I say, this is just my theory, I say Bernie's watching what is happening with Joe Biden right now, and Bernie's saying to himself, well, I mean, it's no guarantee, but what if this guy doesn't make it to the convention? And what if he doesn't make it to the convention? Granted, Joe Biden will have a large delegate lead, even if he dropped out tomorrow. But what if Bernie Sanders is the only one who walks into that convention with delegates underneath his belt? If you're the National Democrat Party and you're already unified once around the person who wasn't Bernie on purpose just to stop Bernie, do you think you have the political capital to do that again? I say it is not at all out of the realm of possibility for Bernie Sanders to still end up with the nomination. I'm not predicting it, but people, you see what Joe Biden is right now. You see how he's conducting himself. I don't know if he lasts until November, and I don't know if he lasts until the nomination. I say somebody should step in, and at some point, I have to assume someone will step in and say, Joe, it's time to go to Florida. It's time to golf for a little bit. And that's why Bernie Sanders is staying in this race. Now, he's playing nice. The rumors are that Bernie Sanders sent Joe Biden the questions he's going to challenge him with already. Sends them to him ahead of time. That's an absurd thing. I've never even heard of that before. So he's playing nice. He's being the nice guy. Why would you be the nice guy? Well, because you really want him to look your way if old Joe can't do it anymore. Call me a cynic. Either way. All right, we're going to ask Kira Davis with Red State about that in just a second. Hang on. Joining me now, editor-at-large of Red State, Kira Davis. And before I get to my cynical Bernie Sanders theory right now, I wanted to ask you, as a Californian, which you are, we don't have to go into all that, but as a Californian, what is this AB5 weird thing that everybody and their brother is screaming about and Joe Biden somehow got behind? What is it? Explain it to somebody who's stupid.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. You're the perfect person. Okay, so AB5 is... it's basically a piece of legislation that just came down the wire, and it basically, to explain it in the simplest of terms, it basically outlaws every independent contracting job. So anything you 1099 for is basically illegal now. There are a few industries that got some exemptions. I think the truckers got an exemption. The writers are looking at getting an exemption, but right now my job at Red State is technically illegal. So yeah, it's a crazy piece of legislation, and Joe Biden got behind it. It has destroyed 1 million jobs here in California, and it's only getting worse. It has turned the economy upside down, and we're fighting like crazy on a bipartisan basis to overturn this legislation. So, but it's coming to the federal level. It's already passed the House at the federal level. It's sitting in the Senate right now. It's called the PRO Act, and it's waiting to be forced upon us should we lose the White House and Congress in 2020. This is very serious stuff. I'm glad you asked about it. Thank you.
Wait a minute. What is the justification for it? I mean, I'm sure it's a bunch of crap, but what is it? Why?
Well, the writers of the legislation, a woman called Lorena Gonzalez, who represents San Diego, will tell you that it was done to really get at Uber and Lyft to try to address misclassification of employees. Unfortunately, Uber and Lyft just ignored the legislation, and it actually accidentally, and that's your opinion or mine, that's only based on conjecture, accidentally entrapped everyone who contracts independently. It was a union bill, Jesse. It was written by the unions. The idea, even Lorena Gonzalez herself says, the idea is to get every person in California to be a W-2 employee and then push all those people into unions. That's what this is. But I mean, it's killed Christmas. Like Santa Claus performers can no longer contract. It's killed festivals. We've had to cancel festivals and operas and theaters. Children's theaters are closing. Translators, courtroom translators, gone. We have a nursing shortage because nurses can't contract extra jobs on the side. Do you see how serious this is? It's crazy here right now.
I mean, look, I'm actually okay with it killing the creepy little fake Santas. They've always kind of weirded me out, but that's another story entirely. All right, here's my Bernie Sanders theory. Totally cynical, I know, but he's not dropping out of the race. He is, however, all of a sudden playing nice with Joe Biden. He's sending Biden the questions he's going to ask him ahead of time. Nancy Pelosi standing up there saying, I don't think Bernie should drop out. I say that Bernie Sanders is staying in this race because he sees Joe Biden's health going south in some way. I don't know what way that is, but something's not working up there. And I say Bernie's holding out for Joe to lose his mind.
You could be very right. I personally believe that Bernie's just like, what's he got to lose? He's going to be dead the next time an election comes around. So I really do think he's just kind of like gonads to the wall, you know. He might as well go out swinging. That's what I think. I think he was really ticked off that he had to step aside for Hillary last time. He doesn't want to have to do that for Joe. Perhaps you're right. Maybe he is banking on Joe just collapsing one day. Bernie doesn't seem that far off from doing the same thing, to be honest with you. But I think he's just really thinking this is his last gasp. I mean, why not? He might as well just go for it. And frankly, I'm happy to see him stay in the race. I think the Democrat voters should have the opportunity to speak and to finish speaking. And if they want Bernie Sanders, then they should elect Bernie Sanders, and then the Democrats can deal with the fallout from that. I want him to stay in this race. Let the Democrat voters decide, and then we'll all hold them accountable for what they've decided.
I actually agree with you on that. Now, granted, it's not my circus and they're not my monkeys, so it's not my problem. But I like giving the people a choice. I like giving the people a clear choice. Was the rejection of Bernie Sanders a rejection of his, way harder left than anything America really has ever elected before? Was it really a rejection of that? Or was it a matter of the Democrats uniting behind one guy and selecting their candidate?
I think it's a little more complicated than either of those scenarios. I think Joe Biden was right when we went through the whole circus of the Iowa caucuses, and then he lost New Hampshire and he went right down to South Carolina. And Biden said, look, the black voters haven't spoken yet, and they're a heavy voting demographic. And he was right. And I do believe that Biden's got some life in his campaign still. Whether or not he's got life as a candidate remains to be seen. But I think that Biden represents an old school kind of diplomatic position that some people miss because of Trump. He's also Obama's vice president. So he carries that goodwill with him. So I don't know if the voters were necessarily rejecting socialism, but I do think that there is an entire block of voters on the Democrat side that just haven't really been heard yet. And at the end of the day, the Democrats just want to beat Trump. That's all they want to do. They want to beat him. So they're going to vote for who they think they can beat him. And they think that Biden has a better chance at this point.
Kira, I need you to explain something to me, and clearly you're a bit more qualified to speak on this than I am. Why do black Democrats like Joe Biden? I find it to be the oddest. I just find it to be the oddest thing in the world. I understand one candidate being more appealing to this group or that group, but black people and Joe Biden seems like a weird marriage to me.
I really don't think so. I think that we on the center right, or at least non-progressive side, think of Joe as kind of a bumbling old fool, but he's like a politician of the old day. He's very diplomatic. If you see him in person, people really like him. They really do. And he represents a time when politicians really spoke as diplomats. They spoke in congenial terms, and people liked that. Now, America was tired of that, and that's why we got Trump. But there's still a very large group of people who appreciate that style. And Biden is just one of those guys, you get to him in person and he's kissing the babies and he's pressing the flesh. He just seems like a really congenial guy. And do not underestimate the power of the Obama vote, the power of the nostalgia of the Obama era and what that means for black voters as far as who Joe Biden is. But I think he represents that I don't know if you ever watched his South Carolina press conference, but the way he was talking to people and joking with people, that's the Joe Biden that people like and vote for. People like you and me, we pick apart his every move because we do think of him as a bit foolish, but not everybody sees him that way.
Kira Davis, Red State, much appreciated.
Thanks, Jesse. Good talking to you.
Be good. All right. We have one of the cringiest videos I've ever played for you on this show. And then, look, I owe some people an apology, and I'm going to do that in just a second. Well, there's a show out there. It's called Masked Singer, and, well, just watch. All right. Well, they are canceling basketball tournaments and canceling fans from attending tournaments. So, on Twitter yesterday, I made this statement. I said, quote, "With a heavy heart, I must announce that nobody will attend the NCAA women's basketball tournament for the 40th consecutive year." It was a cheap, sexist jab at women's sports and women's basketball. And boy, the outcry from women's basketball players, WNBA players, I've got ESPN commentators, filmmakers, you name it. They have been screaming at me for 24 hours about the errors of my ways. I have things like this, quote, "I hope the people you love, your boss, anyone who cares about you sees this and rethinks why they give you the time of day. Must be nice to be a white male and never have to fight or struggle for anything." I've had quotes telling me to go F myself. I've had quotes like this one saying, "Feeling like a man after that one, huh? Attaboy." And on it goes. So, I understand this is unusual for me. I understand part of what you like about the show is I am unapologetic. But I have heard the complaints. And I understand that I offended some people with that, cheap shot at women's basketball. And I have to tell you, I was thinking about what is the best way to say sorry? What is the best way to apologize in a way that women's basketball fans will understand? So I want you to understand this. I want you to think of the joke like a basketball, okay? And I got the basketball, and I started dribbling it up the floor. I was running as fast as I could, but it kind of just looked like slow plodding. It wasn't very impressive. And there was only one fan in the stands, and they were yelling and waving. And I was driving down the lane, and I was getting ready to dunk it, and then I realized I didn't have the athleticism to get up that high to dunk it. So instead, I just tried to shoot a layup, but my wrists were too weak, and it clanged off the bottom of the rim. And that's what happened with that joke, and that's my apology. I'll see you tomorrow.